Welcome to another episode of the Soft and System Side to Sales, where we dissect different elements of the sales department, the sales area, the sales processes. And today we're going to be talking with my guest and our guest, myself and Jason's guest, Patrick, today, all about feedback in sales. See you in a minute. Well, hello everyone. Welcome, Jason. Welcome, Patrick. And today we're going to talk about feedback in sales, right? And just to open up the conversation, my thoughts on feedback, and this goes far beyond sales. Feedback is probably the most underrated mechanism in business today, right? I'm not just talking about getting sales, I'm talking about everything internally, everything you do. Are you doing it well? Is there room to improve? Sailors don't learn their skills on calm seas. They learn it through fighting, through tough winds, tough waves, and that feedback helps them become better and better at what they do. And there's opportunities all through the sales funnel, the teams, the systems, the people, the relationships, everything. And I believe it's so important, specifically in sales, to get this mechanism right. So without further ado, Patrick, Jason, who wants to follow up? What element do you want to start with when it comes to feedback?
This is another massive topic. I think let's start off with customer feedback. So I think that might be a good way to start, because I think it's good to find out how well your sales team is actually doing. And a good mechanism by that is to ask your customers. So whether that's by your marketing person or whoever it might be, because you want to just check in to see why did you buy from us in the first place? What did the salesperson do particularly that met your needs and went beyond that? What things could we do to improve on our process? Because we want to make sure that whatever we deliver well. But is there anything that we can improve on? Because there's lots of different facets around that. Some salespeople out there overpromise and underdeliver. Did we do that? Do we? Lots of other questions that we could ask. And I'm going to keep it quite simple today because I want to make sure that we all get some airtime here. Patrick, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a great discussion. I'm going to go another direction here, if you'll allow me, and that is, can you actually take feedback? Because I remember early in my career, I came out of a very street environment, so my language was very street, and I got pulled aside by a sales manager, and he said, "Pat," he said, he said, "we can see your potential, but he says you're working in one of the highest wealth cities in Canada." And he said, "You're dealing with business people who think at that level. So you either stay where you are or you start making the kind of money we think you can." And from that point on, my commission checks doubled about every 2 months. I changed immediately.
Amazing. Yoram, we're talking about feedback mechanisms, and we're all taking a different approach about where feedback is important within the sales mechanism, the teams, the people, the process, etc. What would be your thoughts to where feedback is powerful within sales?
It depends on the person. I'll say actually take a step back. I think feedback is important. I think one of the challenges sometimes is we give a lot of feedback to the weaker ones because we can see there's issues. Sometimes the stronger ones we avoid because we think they're fine and they don't listen. And the medium ones who we sometimes may not give as much feedback as we should or put enough energy because we're sucked down by the weaker ones, but the medium ones could, let's say as Patrick, a little thing like that, and they just jump up. So I think it's very important to really analyze how a person is doing on various stages. It's true. Listen, if you close deals, you're probably good at most aspects of the sales process, or whatever you come into contact, whatever aspects of the sales process you're in charge of. You may not have somebody who finds the leads, but take over the rest. But is there a way you could do even better? I can think of my best managers who looked at every single individual. Where are they doing? How are they doing? What are they doing well? They're looking. I think that's a great thing sometimes if you have a CRM that works and they're entering notes like, where are they? Seem to be filling up the funnel. Very good. And then, maybe there is a gap. And I saw, I don't brag, I was like number 1 or 2 on the team. She one day said to me, your numbers could be better. I'm like, what? She says, yeah, you're hitting target, you can do better. And started on a really intense training for the next month or 2. And guess what happened to my commission? My sales, everything went up. And of course, the person who was number 1 ahead of me wasn't giving in that easily. So she was doing the same with her as well. So I think, does it depend? Well, I think it depends on the person. But listen, if at the end of the day, we have to make sure we do it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm going to take a different one. It's not a million miles off yours, Joran. My example is when I first started sales, all I could rely on was my process skills. I hadn't got a clue what I was doing. I was just doing. And I had this thing in my mind about, well, if I created the process and at every step, if I improved the mini conversions along every step of that process, that will look after the final sales conversion down the road. If I got a little bit better, every time I picked up the phone and I didn't get a meeting, I would ask the question, why didn't I get a meeting? Right? What do I have to say differently? What do I have to tweak in my message to get a meeting? Then I was getting meetings, but I wasn't getting sales. What do I have to do differently in that meeting, ensure to get a sale? And I ended up, instead of having a sales meeting, I was given a complimentary CPD session with a potential client. And that opened many doors for me. So the feedback taught me how to add value at every step of the process. Anytime there's a touch point, it's all about adding value to a potential customer. Give before you gain. And that was my first experience with feedback in sales.
Yeah, I was going to suggest that getting feedback is also quite challenging because like myself, I run workshops like we all do, but getting that feedback, but I don't want a happy sheet. I want something that's going to compel me to learn and grow and make a difference. And it's the same as people's customers out there. Like if you're doing the marketing activity, we don't want that happy sheet. We want something that's going to engage us and it's going to make us think and actually act upon it immediately. There are some customers out there that will give us some good points to grow and learn, but that's as a business as a whole. So I'm going to throw that back out to everyone in the room here. What do you do specifically? I think, Patrick, you suggested something a little while ago, and I'm curious about that, how we take the feedback.
Yeah, sales is about improvement. It's constant improvement. It's constant learning. And, you really want to be able to step back when somebody mentions something to you, because to be perfectly honest, if you're in a customer setting and they happen to say something like, how do you think we see it? They're actually giving you some feedback, which is to say that if you take a deeper interest in us, we'll take a deeper interest in you.
Yeah.
And I can share with you, by dealing with most of the major retailers across North America and their advertising agencies, that I was the one that had to acclimate, not them. I was an educator, but I was also in a constant state of learning about how it is that they buy, not how I sell. How I sell is incidental.
Yeah.
If you think of AI, the way it works is at the moment it's trying to learn from us. And I was listening to a podcast where they said all these companies, or big companies like Microsoft and Meta, etc., want people to use AI because that way they can learn from what people are doing and improve. So I would actually add, that's really the way, Patrick, is you need to keep learning and keep just listening to everything. And some feedback, I think it's trying to learn not to let every feedback swing you off, because sometimes the feedback most of it may be garbage, but there might be some good stuff. It might be a little bit of in there that can help you a bit. I mean, what do people think about buddying up? I've always been a big believer in going with other people on a meeting and bring them along, and somebody, if you can have somebody you trust, depends on the environment.
I always suggest that buddying up is a really good thing to do, and especially when you've had some feedback from your manager, your sales director, or a customer. So tag teaming that is really good. And I've noticed Chris has just written something on our chat here. One of the most difficult issues in sales training, having provide negative feedback to a sales rep, and that's a really good valid thing to suggest, actually, because it can't always be positive, but I'm sure we can frame it in a way that they learn to think about it.
Yeah,
because you can't say, and I'll give you an example. There are people out there, and I've heard it this week, and I've had it, that passive way of doing things, and it's not helpful, and it's not productive to the person's feelings, because they feel demotivated, and you want to feel positive, but you want to actually change your behavior because something's actually happened. So that's a good call out, Chris.
Yeah, no, it is a very good call out. It's not just the what, it's the how, right? It's very important. And it has to be, when I'm ever delivering feedback, I often followed up, said, look, I've been where you are, and I'd love to help you. If you want to do some shadowing, some brainstorming, we can work together to make it better, to make it constructive, to show that you actually care about them improving. But going back to the point about, Jason, what you were saying, I'd like to segue back, because it is difficult to get feedback sometimes, because people tell you, oh yeah, it was great, but you don't want to hear that. You don't. So instead of asking for feedback, I've learned to rephrase, to your point, Jason, is when they say, tell me what was good, right? That tell me what could have been better. It's not about, can you tell me what you taught? Tell me what could have been better. So you're pointing, you're anchoring the conversation or the request for response a certain way. So you're actually asking what could have been better, right? Or what else would you like to see? And I found reframing my words in that way supports getting more productive feedback.
Yeah, because you don't want the other person to come back aggressively either, because it can cause that friction, and we've all seen it. But it's up to the experienced person, manager, to frame it in a way that doesn't upset, make the other person aggressive, or whatever it might be. So, good call out there.
Chris, if I could address you directly, there's a couple of things here. Number one is that the gents here are mentioning buddy calls. I call them four-legged calls, and I think they're brilliant for a couple of reasons. One is that you're pre-planning the call so deeply that there shouldn't be a lot of surprises. You should have your first four questions ranked for efficacy, dollar value, and productivity. And around feedback, I kind of look at it as a sales trainer who's been doing this for about 17 years in my private practice, and then decades before that. It's about removing blockers. And so if you share with the person, how do you feel about removing a blocker today that I see that potentially is holding you back from making the amount of money that I think you could be making with just a couple of small adjustments?
Yeah, very good.
Can I just,
go ahead, Jordan?
Sorry, Shaq. Now, I want to address Chris as well. I can't see the bottom of the message, it disappears, but I think it comes down to how you present your feedback. I think you've got to really yourself, if you are presenting feedback, you've got to really want in yourself. It's not about putting that person in the place and being clever and being cool. We all love that. But I think it's, as you're saying, not just, they've got to feel that you want them. And you were talking about this as well, Patrick, is you want them to be better. You want them to be better at what they do. And sometimes you have to give something negative, Chris. You have no choice. They're just doing something which is diabolical. It's affecting the team. It's affecting them. And frankly, it's affecting, as your manager, it's affecting your income too. And, it's being noticed. But I think there's a way. I think the best thing to do is, start with a positive, bring in the negative and end with a positive. Saying this is good, but frankly, this is not where it should be. I'm sorry, and listen, some people are confrontational. Some people you just can't speak to.
Yeah.
Some people will just drink in everything you say, whether they try to do it, they're like, oh, thank you so much. They're like, I'm really excited. Yeah, let's do this.
All that,
Most of
all
them,
it says to me, Yarn, all it says to me is you made a bad hire. And if you made a bad hire,
no, I'm going to go. Hold on. First, you got to look at people you may have inherited. Remember that people have always inherited people
that's
existing.
right.
Yes, if you've got somebody who won't listen at all, or has got arrogance, or maybe they listen to others but not to you because they have a misconception, be it your fault or not, that's another problem. Yeah, you shouldn't hire that person. Some people, I'll tell you, I think if some people are hired who, I think most people, they're a little prickly. I wouldn't say, we have this expression in England, a little prickly. You know, it's not like they don't listen. And actually they do come back at you. And you know something, we actually really liked it because they would listen to what you say and come back, and they would process it quite quickly. Actually, they could really, that's one of the reasons they're good at sales, is they could reprocess it and then swing it back at you, right? And they would actually, and then you'd actually probably come along with a better solution and a good way forward. So the brain works, but you had to know how to manage them.
Yeah.
And if you put in the effort, they would take it on. And occasionally they could highlight things. No, this is what you're missing. This is what I'm doing. I would say, well, maybe we do this. That's interesting. You know, saying, what about you and I do this? And we're like, you know, that is how things can come along. So yes, I agree. They can't, I don't want to really hire somebody who, listen, unless they're really amazing and I need them back desperately, I don't want to hire somebody who's closed-minded.
Yeah.
And
can I interject there for a quick sec there, Joram? I think if the person listens to the feedback and is done correctly, maybe suggest, what do you think you might do differently next time? What else is there possible for you to do? When I do coaching, I always go, well, what else? What else is possible? Just imagine that you could do it. Just imagine what would that be? What would that look like? How would you do? How would you act? Is there any other support that we could possibly give you to make sure that you embrace that feedback and you can make some behavioral changes there? Or you don't say behavioral changes, but anything that we can do just to help you. And as I say, that buddy system, or however you want to say it, that partnering person to actually help you develop forward, whether it's the manager or whether it's someone that's compelling within that guided discovery. God, you're on fire today, Chris James. Well done for that. So however you want to frame it, make sure that works. And it's always good to get the listening ears when they do come back and go, well, what did you learn from that call? Back to you, Patrick and Shay.
Yeah, you know what? I would just say this. If somebody is prickly on an ongoing basis, then they're not a team member. It's just wrong. Okay. I'm sorry. You know, it's not about the individual on the team. It's about the team. Now, here's the important thing, is that if we all sound the same, then we're boring. So I'm actually looking for, so I'll give you the perfect example. So I think the most underrated group that you'll run into in a company are the analytics. And just because an analytic doesn't have as much to say doesn't mean that they're not thinking very deeply. And I think they get a really bad rap. So I will often lean over to that analytic and say, all right, so, you know, you've been really, really taking all of this in. If you could give us your one or two top takes on this topic that you think will add value to this discussion, what are they and how would you implement?
And you know what? I'm going to add to that, Patrick. I'm going to go up a layer because we're talking about the different elements of feedback here. We've talked about the process feedback. We've talked about people feedback. Chris, you pointed out about how you give feedback is crucial for your teams because sales, you know, sales is tough. When you're getting a lot of no's and then you're being told by your boss you're not doing a good job and the feedback is very bad, that's sending the wrong signals altogether, right? So feedback can be powerful either way. But here's another area of feedback that I like to discuss as well. And this is on the reporting. And you mentioned analytics, Patrick, right? So depending on the industry, I always say when you're going out to visit your potential clients, you're knocking on doors. I always like to say, try and ask 5 questions in the course of conversation, what they like, what they didn't like, or why they're not buying from you, right? And if you submit all this into a database in standard ways, if you did that for every meeting, by the end of the month, you'll have amazing data to say what worked well, what didn't work well, what do we need to do better next month? What do we need to change? How can we remove the friction better, make it easier to buy? That's another type of feedback. So you can use those analytics to improve your sales message, your service, include something that wasn't there before. Whatever it is, you optimize and innovate it and disrupt it and tweak it little often. Amazon are amazing at this.
Yeah. And I was going to think about that. And it's the marketing strategies, which is the A/B test, or even the ABC test. And to use that back in on the feedback that we actually have. So that's a really good point. And something that I wrote down a little while ago about A/B testing, just to see what works and what doesn't work with feedback. And the question I was going to ask, when was the last time we all gave feedback to someone? And I'll give you an example. Today I gave feedback and someone connected with me straight away, and they it was an automated AI message. And I don't mind it every now and again. And I just wrote back and said, look, I don't like your automated AI message. It's not authentic. And then they put, we growth sales this way. Said, sorry, you're using automation again. So I gave feedback and she apologized. I said, well, this is my feedback. And I just don't think it was productive in the way that you've done it, because I'm not interested now. So that's my feedback from today, just because I could tell it was automated. What about yourselves?
Good question. Go ahead, Yoram.
Actually, just before this session, I was on a call with somebody, a Zoom call, networking call, and I was he was telling me about his business, his startup, and the struggles he's having. He bought a salesperson, it didn't work, and I said, you know, it was very interesting. I was listening to what he said, and I said, you know, it sounds to me, I could be wrong, that you're making the right connections, or you have an idea of who would be where it'd be useful, but you're not getting to the point where you're portraying it to the right people. Right? You have a good connection with somebody, you speak to them, you try to make the right connection. Is this person going to make a decision? I said to him, this person, not a salesperson, is this person going to close it? That's what you need to find out. How do they bring things on? Who can they connect you with in a company? And if it's going, like, you've got to have that balance between, and we've all done this, and I'm as guilty of, you know, constantly trying to have that cadence to chase up with somebody, but not at the same time letting it swallow up all your time that you're neglecting another way in. And I think I put in a way, it's like, it sounds to me like, yeah, it just sounds like, I mean, I asked them, like, one of the things I thought was very interesting, I said to him, so how are you doing this at the moment, right, rather than just lecture somebody? And I think, yes, this is somebody who I don't manage, somebody I don't know that well, so you're more careful, but maybe that's sometimes a bit of the way we need to deal with people. Patrick, maybe prickly was not the right word. I think it's like in sales, you interact with different people in a different way. So it's knowing how to do it. I said, so what are you doing this? I said, you got that? He said, yeah, we brought that on. I said, absolutely. I said, keep using it. You're on the right path. I said, but I basically gave him some blunt feedback that he's really just not using his time that he's putting aside to sales and marketing his product effectively. And I think if we perhaps, I'm thinking about, that might be the way we should really be approaching feedback as a whole, is not speaking down to somebody. Again, if they're doing something terrible, I agree with Patrick, you've got to knock them in their place and tell them you bring the whole company, you bring the whole show down, you got to get going, or this is not going to work out. But I think really trying to understand, like, what somebody is doing, the same way we do it with sales. Like, I think we mentioned, yeah, Chris mentioned discovery, right? We need to understand, where's this person thinking, what's going on in the head. I don't know what your thoughts are about that.
Yeah, well, I think you said a good point there, Yoram, about the feedback has to suit how people like to receive feedback. When you understand that person, so the delivery, some people like it direct, some people not so direct. Come to Ireland, the not so direct is the right approach. We're not the most direct people in the world. But if you go to somewhere mainland Europe, they would appreciate direct feedback, right? And again, specifically when you're looking to get a contract with a client, it's always good to know the absolutes, as opposed to, oh, let me think about it for an hour, because in Ireland, traditionally, we'd be afraid of giving people bad news.
Oh,
right?
God, yeah. It's horrendous, and it's frustrating. And it does depend on, I think, cultural differences does make a difference, but it can be very frustrating if they're avoiding giving you, they don't want to upset you. You go, well, I'm not going to get upset. I'd rather listen and know where I'm at. And you're in New York, Patrick. You're in Canada. How do they work out in Canada? What's the difference there?
You know, I would say largely. Now, Canada is evolving very quickly right now, as are a lot of other countries. So let's be straight up about that. But I would say largely, we have a tendency to listen a lot harder than we do other things. And we have a tendency to lean in to collaboration more than we do confront it. Now, as a country, we protest the hell out of everything. It's just the way Canadians are. They just have this,
It's the French influence without actually being
the French influence.
It goes right back to the Second World War. You know, when our guys would come over in the Corvettes, all of the people in the British Navy would look at our ships with all the crazy paintings on the side and go, "These guys are nuts." But here's the thing: it has to do with being brave enough to sit and listen to another person's point of view and quietly say, "I hear what you're saying. I think what you believe is what you truly believe. But my question would be to you, what does the longer outcome look like if you stay on this course? Because if you do, here's my sense of where it'll go."
Yeah. What I love about that, Patrick, by the way, is you're encouraging them to see this information for themselves as opposed to deliver it directly to them.
Oh, yeah.
And that makes such a difference. Because again, and that's a strategy I use in many different environments, because people buy into things when it comes out of their own mouth much quicker than you tell them, right? So look, I know we're coming up on time, right? I think this is a huge subject. I believe we talked about, and correct me if I've missed something here, we talked about feedback in process, right? Your steps getting to the sale. We talked about the analytics, feedback on a monthly level to see what's working, what's not, what can you do better next month. We also talked about delivering feedback to your teams to making sure they stayed motivated, so it wasn't going to demotivate them. But then also it's about receiving feedback yourself, right? Was there anything else there that we covered, or anything else that we should possibly consider again?
I think we should carry on this conversation for next time, because there's lots of golden gems, and I just don't think we have enough time to cover everything today. But I think we've covered a lot of things, a big ground already. So I thank everyone in the room for that.
Yeah, Patrick, you were going to say something.
3 words: quality, not pretty.
Quality, not
pretty.
What? That's a new one for me.
Not pretty.
Quality, not pretty.
Yeah. Speak for yourself.
I would
right?
just, I would just end, and this could be next week's, is when you have given the feedback, be it to a team member or client, if you're expecting to see improvements or changes, or you're persuading the clients to do some changes, you've got to follow up, and you've got to acknowledge all the various steps. So if somebody's doing, you've given them a few things they've got to work on, give them praise for those steps, because they feel motivated to push themselves further. And I think with the clients, Patrick put a beautiful way of basically getting the client to think differently and go along a different path. Check in with that client, and if they get a bit annoyed, say, "Listen, I'm taking you on this journey. I'm making sure you guys are going to be okay. I'm not letting go of you." And that way they feel that they're taking a gamble, but you're there by their side.
Brilliant. Well, look, guys, everyone, thanks for joining us. Thanks for everybody that tuned in. And we hope to see you again next week on the Soft and System Side to Sales. Have a great day, everyone, and we'll speak to you soon.
Stay brave.
Thanks a lot, Chris, for your contributions.